welcome, Sophie, and anyone else who may have joined us. This is our presentation into young people and youth homelessness, Pobl, ifanc, Digartrefedd. And I'm going to go first. Of the two of us, David and I'm going to talk about the work that we do at End Youth Homelessness Cymru, who we are, why we need to look at youth homelessness as a distinct issue from broader adult homelessness, what that distinction can achieve, and why making that distinction makes sense both for the young people and society as a whole. And just before I start, I just always like to run over what we actually at EYHC mean when we talk about youth homelessness. So while there's no Welsh-specific definition, we'll continue to work to the answer definition of youth homelessness, which is youth homelessness occurs when an individual between the age of 13 and 26 is experiencing rooflessness or houselessness, or is living in insecure or inadequate housing without a parent, family member, or other legal guardian. So why youth homelessness? And I'm sure this won't come to a surprise to many of you in the room who obviously work with young people every day. But just I'll run through quickly some of the reasons as to why we need to look at youth homelessness as distinct. So young people experiencing homelessness at a key developmental period, socially, psychologically, and physiologically. They often have no experience of independent living and lack the resilience of adulthood. And then some of these young people are involved in youth-specific systems, notably the care system, which increase their risk of homelessness. Others can get caught out in the gap between youth and adult services. For instance, the leap between child and adolescent mental health services to adult mental health services, which again heighten their risk of homelessness if they don't make a successful, seamless transition between the two of them. And as we know, they're treated differently by the UK welfare system. They're able to access as much money for housing costs as older adults. And across the board, young people tend to be at the most precarious end of the labour market, with their employment frequently characterised by being poorly paid, and on 0-hour contracts. And finally, research has shown across many, many years and many different parts of research that young people often take different pathways into homelessness than adults, with family breakdown frequently being the most cited cause of youth homelessness. Obviously, family breakdown is a cause of crisis for anyone at any age, but it's more immediately threatening to a young person dependent on their family for a home. So I just quickly talk about some of the data the research has found in Wales over the past couple of years. It's shown us that in a sample of homeless people in Wales, 48% first became homeless before the age of 21, and of those sampled, 78% have become homeless more than 3 times in their life, highlighting the fact that once you've become homeless, your chance of becoming homeless again later on in life increases significantly. The tables I've taken from a piece of research there at the bottom show not only the increased likelihood of your homelessness reoccurring if you're first homeless at a younger age, but also how the number of support needs a person has tends to increase with each time a person is homeless, again highlighting the ease at which an individual could potentially become stuck in the system. And just to finish, we can see on the screen the latest 2019 Welsh Government stats on youth homelessness showed that nearly 8,000 young people presented to their local authority to help with homelessness. But obviously, these are now 2 or 3 years old, and they don't take into account the effect of COVID, which I'll come to in a sec. And we know that these are only the stats recorded of the people who presented to their local authority. And there's a number of young people who do not present, and may continue to reside in overcrowded family homes, find shelter in dangerous or inappropriate situations, sofa surf, or potentially even sleep rough. This 8,000 is definitely going to be an undercount. Yeah.
I think the slideshow is stuck in slide 1. Apologies, I've only just noticed somebody's mentioned in the chat.
Why is that happened? So that was, can you see now?
Okay, we're on slide 2 now, I think.
Yeah, so that was, sorry, they were my slides for slide 2. These are the slides you should have seen with that lovely table for slide 3. Why is reading view come off? Is that better?
That's better. Sorry.
I jump between the two now.
Yeah, perfect.
Okay, apologies for that, everyone. Hopping, as David well knows, wasn't the most easy to use. So sorry for rattling on there without you being able to see my tables. But yeah, there's the data overview. And like I said, that 8,000 young people in 2019 is potentially a massive undercount because it's a couple of years out of date, doesn't take into effect COVID, and we know there's a number of young people who weren't presented to their local authority for help in the first place. So just to quickly touch on the COVID effect, Obviously, it's not been an easy time for anyone, and I'm sure, as you all know, for young people, the pandemic has seen a continuation of long-standing societal trends. 16 to 24-year-olds are most likely to become unemployed, are most likely to continue to be the most likely to face homelessness as a result of family breakdown, and as well are most likely to be still continue to be in precarious housing situations. I mean by that, in precarious situations in the private rented sector, or potentially living in overcrowded family homes. So yeah, it is plain that in tackling youth homelessness, therefore, we need a distinct approach which is separate to the wider approach to tackling broader homelessness. We need an approach which is provided by experts of young people and designed with young people in mind, and where possible, co-produced with young people. It means services that are psychologically informed and are aware of those young people at most heightened risk of homelessness. So this could be care experienced young people or young LGBTQ plus people. And we need a shift in resources across the system as a whole, upstream, to unashamedly focus on prevention rather than continue to just firefight and deal with a person when they present to the local authority as homeless. We need to be looking further upstream as to how we can prevent the young person from even coming into contact with the homelessness system. Is that changed successfully? The slide?
That's changed.
Yeah, cool. So yeah, this brings me nicely on to the introduction to the roadmap, which is what we've been working on at End Youth Homelessness Cymru as our distinct approach, what we're trying to advocate and lobby for now off the back of this big piece of research we've done. So the Homelessness Action Group was a group of experts which were pulled together by still the current Julie James, the Housing Minister, in the last Senedd term, to look at what needs to be done to tackle homelessness in Wales. We've taken their recommendations and we've applied a youth lens to it. So we're adopting the same framework, so people working in the sector don't have to learn a number of different frameworks, but we're just looking at what the HAG recommended, but looking at it through a youth homelessness perspective. The roadmap focuses on what we know, so what research has shown us, and also what we should do about it. And it was co-produced through 5 sessions with our expert steering panel and 4 years of End Youth Homelessness Cymru as a campaign. So the goal of a roadmap is that it provides the basis for strategic planning and action from Welsh Government, local authorities, RSLs, third sector, faith-based organisations, in order to end youth homelessness and the wider society of Wales as a whole. And before I go on to the infographic of the roadmap, I just want to make it clear that this isn't an infographic of a young person's journey. It's designed to be a tool for which we can see at which stage people may come into contact with a homelessness system, and how society as a whole, so broader than just homelessness, and housing systems need to be set up to ensure that we either prevent that young person from becoming homeless, the right support is there if the young person presents to the system as homeless, and how also when a person's homelessness has been resolved, how we prevent it from happening again. So yeah, here is the infographic. So as I mentioned, we use the same prevention framework as the Homelessness Action Group, and everything developed here reflects their recommendations, but it is through that youth-focused lens. So I'll go through each of the 5 prevention stages, highlighting what each stage is and highlighting just one of the many different schemes or projects which could be adopted at each stage. So in terms of universal prevention, this is about preventing or minimising risks of homelessness across the population at large. So there are broad society-wide approaches to preventing issues that undermine young people's ability to access and maintain secure, stable, and sustainable accommodation. So examples of this could include poverty reduction, the provision of a sufficient supply of affordable housing, responding to ACEs, and tackling discrimination. So if I just touch on one approach which is taking place at the moment, this is Taithres. Some of you may have heard of it. It's a innovative approach established in partnership between United Welsh and Llamau, and it's in essence a youth housing association which is drawing inspiration from a similar scheme in Finland. It was launched last year in 2020, and in the next month or so we'll see its first young people going into their tenancies. And importantly, young people are instrumental in designing the principles of a project via a youth board, and young people explain the issues that matter to them, such as rent levels, the location of a property, the community, and bills. And within time, Taithres will hopefully give young people a stable base from which to access training, work and education with support available to them, but not as a requirement of obtaining the tenancy. And then if we move to targeted prevention, so this is upstream prevention focused on high-risk groups, such as vulnerable young people and those going through risky transitions, such as leaving care, prison, or mental health inpatient treatment. And we know that some young people are at greater risk, thanks to research that's been done, and the point of transition between some systems can be a point of danger. So we need to make sure that for this group of young people in particular, there's specific systems in place which lesser their heightened propensity to experiencing homelessness. So one fantastic example of this, which is just getting off the ground in Wales, is Upstream Cymru. This is a collaborative early intervention initiative led by Cardiff University, Llamau, and the schools and local authorities in which the current pilot schemes are taking place. And this really gets to the heart of how youth homelessness systems need to be designed. The aim is to identify young people at risk of homelessness long before they reach a crisis point or are threatened by homelessness. The model is based on an Australian model, which has seen a 40% reduction in youth homelessness in the areas it's been trialled in. So in effect, it's a survey that is carried out by all students annually with questions designed to highlight triggers that show a propensity to homelessness. And just on the early data that has come back from the study so far, it goes against some preconceptions, as of those pupils that are deemed to be at high risk of youth homelessness, 65% showed no or low risk of school disengagement, which goes against, obviously, the preconception that those at most risk of youth homelessness were those showing high risk of school disengagement. Not to say that that group aren't, but there may be a whole group of young people which aren't currently being picked up by the current systems we have. The pilots have also provided a wealth of data about homelessness, but also about well-being, bullying, which are really vital to the school. And with the international evidence from Australia and the 40% reduction of youth homelessness presentations they were able to achieve, this is a scheme at UHC in particular we're really keen to see roll down further.
That's so 10 minutes, Bill.
That's 10 minutes now, is it? Okay, I'll try and wrap up. Sorry, a couple of technical problems. So yeah, crisis prevention is about preventing homelessness likely to occur within 56 days, which is in line with the Welsh legislation, which asks local authorities to intervene to help households threatened with homelessness. And a really important part of this is co-located services, whereby local authorities set up one-stop shops so young people coming into a local authority don't have to navigate the local authority system themselves. They come into normally one building where there's housing, social services, children's services, mental health advice, all under one roof. Emergency prevention is about providing emergency support for those young people at immediate risk of homelessness or those sleeping rough. So the Youth Homeless Helpline running in partnership between Llamau and Shelter Cymru is a really good example of this. It gives free over-the-phone advice for young people, and it runs on weekends and late at night, which is obviously when a number of other services maybe won't be able to respond. And finally, recovery prevention. This is a really important part of a roadmap. It talks about preventing young people becoming homeless again, with our aim eventually for youth homeless to be rare, brief, and non-reoccurrent. And the recovery prevention part is intended to enable the achievement of that non-recurrence. So examples of this include housing first and longer-term community hosting, which I won't go into because I've gone over. But yeah, there'll be more information about both of those schemes on our website if you're interested. And just finally, this presentation has been taken from our summary report. The full report is in the process of being published in the next couple of weeks. And we're also putting together a number of best practice briefings, which will be available on our website in the next couple of weeks, which just give you a quick snapshot of some of the schemes I've talked about today without overloading you information. So apologies, David, I've run over, and apologies to everyone for the mishap with the slides not sharing. No, I've clicked share. Oh.
Yep, hold on a sec. Yeah, that was slick. Yeah.
Just when we thought we'd mastered hopping, we hadn't.
Apologies, everyone. Thanks very much, Bill. Yeah, I just thought I'd make you feel better by also messing up mine. My name's David Walker. I'm the Youth Homelessness Coordinator in Pembrokeshire. Bill, as mentioned earlier, this isn't a linear journey for young person through the homelessness system. And in the main for us, my presentation describes our provision in Pembrokeshire as funded by the Youth Support Grant. Public Health Wales research shows that young people who have got 4 ACEs or more are 16 times more likely to experience homelessness than young people who don't demonstrate any ACEs. The good news really is that risk actually halves where there is a presence of a protective childhood resilience asset, which I believe is going to be the new technical term for youth workers in Wales. Because if you notice down the left-hand side there, one of the protective childhood resilience assets is a supportive teacher or a supportive youth worker. So youth workers really do bring something particular to the youth homelessness arena. One of the things which is very important is that we can bring a long-term engagement. For many young people experiencing homelessness, many professionals close their involvement at a particular stage. Their involvement with their housing officer is likely to end when they're housed. Their involvement with social care is likely to end when they're close to the service. But youth workers can take them through various different stages of the roadmap and various stages and transitions throughout their lives. It involves a participative approach being one of the key underlying principles of youth work, that young people are involved in decisions which affect them. It's a rights-based approach as well, and it's a unique relationship. We know from our work in Pembrokeshire that many of the young people who we now encounter either at home, either as homeless or at risk of homeless, very often did work with us earlier on when they were younger. And there are a number of young people who we've worked with that the fact that they've already had a relationship with us has made it a lot easier for them to engage with us when they find themselves in crisis and homelessness. I'm taking each one of the stages of the roadmap in turn, and in terms of universal prevention in Pembrokeshire, we offer school-based homelessness awareness training in year 9, 10 and 11 of the school years. We cover things like definitions. Bill discussed the fianza definition. We discuss and compare a number of definitions. We look at causes, we look at signs, and we look at how young people can support one another in terms of peer support, but also where they go to in terms of getting support. We also offer training courses in independent living and tenancy skills. We've offered them for some years in Pembrokeshire before even the money came in from Welsh Government and the Youth Support Grant. But during the pandemic, of course, we had to quite quickly adapt, and much of that work went online. And we developed a virtual learning environment. There's a picture of it up there. It's based on Moodle, which lots of students will be using across Wales in college, perhaps in schools in some instances. And it allows young people to work at their own pace on a number of different projects and a number of different topics related to independent living. And one of the things which is quite interesting about that service is that it offers direct access, a bit like this session we're doing today. There is what's called a big blue button, where at certain times young people can press that button and get access to a youth worker who can help them with the process and go through what they're doing on the VLE. And another innovative thing that we have attached to the VLE is that we've got a taster flat, which allows young people to spend up to 5 evenings actually practicing what they've learned on the course in a real life situation. We applied for a housing innovation grant to fund that, and it's been quite a success because it brings in a very practical, applied element to the learning that they do. In terms of targeted provision, we also deliver homelessness prevention work in Pembrokeshire Learning Centre, which is what we call our pupil referral unit. The difference between that and the stuff that we do in the school is because we know that young people who are disengaged from education are both more at risk of homelessness, but also likely to be homeless quicker. We actually offer the VLE provision directly as part of that. We also do some bespoke homelessness prevention work with groups who have got an increased risk of experiencing homelessness, including care experienced young people and LGBTQ+ young people. One of the things that we want to do, but haven't been able to yet, is to participate in the upstream data linkage project. And what that is looking at linking presentations, homelessness presentations from young people over a number of years to the school that they went to, and then look at the potential for extending the upstream pilot that's been going on in other parts of Wales to perhaps bring it to a wider audience. So that's something that we really want to do. I found a very clever quote from Desmond Tutu, who really doesn't have anything to do with Upstream Cymru, but I like the quote because we really need to be working in a prevention model if we're going to reduce the swell of crisis that comes later. And that's really what we're trying to do within our work. In terms of crisis prevention, we've got a number of different activities that we've got running under that particular area of the roadmap. We've got what's called a STEPS multi-agency tiered approach. You can see a little diagram there. Basically, we've got limited time. STEPS allows us to step up and step down support. You know, young people sometimes need a lot of support at a particular time, and then we keep in touch with them and they get less support at a later date. As I've said, we're able to be involved with young people for quite a long period of time. And we have that luxury. So we're able to step up and step down the approach. It is multi-agency. And one of the orange second step there often includes a multi-agency STEPS meeting, which is a problem solving and information sharing meeting that we convene and chair and invite other agencies and other stakeholders along to discuss individual situations with a view to preventing crisis leading on to an emergency. You'll see a little QR code there as well, and if you do have your mobile phone handy and you want to scan it, this would demonstrate what I'm about to say really well. One of the things that we've done is some anti-eviction work. Some of the letters that young people get from housing from landlords are particularly technical and difficult to understand and written in a particular legal way. What we've done is we've worked with some young people who have got experience of homelessness and produced some YouTube videos that explain what these letters mean and what they have to do should they get one of them. And as I say, if you scan the QR code, it takes you directly to the videos. So we have cards and leaflets that we give out to young people with the QR codes on them, and they can scan them on their phone and takes them immediately to the QR code, to the YouTube videos rather. In terms of emergency provision, we have direct input in temporary accommodation in Pembrokeshire. When the pandemic broke out, one of the things that had to happen was the hostel had to close because young people and anybody, in fact, in the hostel couldn't socially isolate. So a lease was purchased on a local hotel, and we do work in there along with other agencies. It's mostly skills based. It often involves use of our VLE, but it also involves a signposting to other services, often within the wider youth service, like substance misuse. The STEPS multi-agency work still continues in there, and we support transition into permanent accommodation as and when required, using the STEPS approach. And recovery prevention. Sorry, I've just noticed a small mistake in my slide. Should we say what we do there? No, not what we know. We provide starter packs for those who are leaving temporary accommodation. These starter packs consist of a tabletop cooker, all sorts of crockery, all sorts of linen, all sorts of things, cleaning equipment, etc. that you need when you start up your own home. They're worth nearly £300, and every young person who transitions from temporary accommodation into their own tenancy gets one of those. They also have access to the Moving Forward project. Now, we have an independent living centre in Pembroke Dock, which hosts this project. And one of the things we do is we provide a furniture library. The furniture library allows us to loan free of charge to everybody who's engaged with the project various pieces of furniture that we get from some of our commercial partners who are refurbishing their premises within the hospitality industry, so they're high quality. We also take donations, and we also have a quite innovative setup with a local housing association where, when they're voiding properties, previously they just cleared the house and put everything in landfill, which costs a lot of money and is incredibly wasteful. And what they now do is they donate us the good quality stuff, which is around about half of all the stuff that they were previously taking in landfill. So as well as having an environmental benefit, it's a huge benefit for young people because it allows us to set them up in their own home very quickly. And as well as furniture, we also provide all sorts of things, pictures and ornaments and various other pieces that are donated, because one of the things young people told us is that they want to make a home, and that staring at bare walls in a very stark environment doesn't really help them maintain their tenancy. So it's about a bit more than furniture, but furniture is what grabs the attention. And at the Independent Living Centre, we also offer a lot of the skills-based stuff that I talked about in some of the earlier slides. Under this particular point in the roadmap, we also have some housing grant funded projects as well. We directly provide supported accommodation to 6 young people, and we also provide an ongoing floating support, which is funded by Housing Support Grant also. Okay, now's time for any questions, any comments that people might have. Thanks very much. Oh. Does anybody have any questions or comments, or perhaps want to introduce us to anything that they're doing in their particular area?
You see that one from Sophie?
I did, Sophie. Yeah, we have actually shared the QR code project with some other authorities already. Of course, you need to develop your own QR code, because all that using our QR code will do is take us to our videos, which doesn't particularly help you. But I do know that some other authorities in Wales have approached us and have actually developed some similar things in their areas. And also we had another local authority give us a QR project they were doing around about cookery, which is incredibly interesting as well. So we've actually benefited from other people's work. The QR technology we previously used to use in youth clubs for treasure hunts, believe it or not, and they kind of came into their own in the pandemic because of the track and trace. So that's really where it come from there. But certainly we would be happy to talk to anyone who's looking to develop a very similar thing in their area. Well, I think that's one for you, Bill. You're plugged into the matrix.
In terms of, you want to be a bit more specific, Dale, there?
I do know that in Powys, they're doing some Housing First for Youth project, which is very interesting. And I do know that in North Wales, they have the Tea Pride provision, which is regional, so it's more than one local authority involved in that, but looking at some specialist supported accommodation for young people who are LGBT plus. Yeah,
perfect. So Housing First for Youth is what I was hoping to touch on at the end of the presentation before I ran out of time. So that's taking the wider Housing First approach and putting a youth lens on it again. There's currently 6 different pilot schemes taking place in Wales, which have all been funded by the Innovation Fund, and hopefully are being evaluated soon. So we'll be able to see the quality, or hopefully the quality of such provision, and hopefully there'll be scope within that to scale up. Like Dave's just touched on there, Tea Pride is something we're really keen to continue to explore. Rolling out further, like Dave said, it's currently based in North Wales. It's a 3-unit supported accommodation for members of the LGBTQ plus community, and we're currently in conversations with a number of different regions across Wales about the potential for those schemes to be rolled out across Wales. And another one I had hoped to touch on in my presentation is community hosting. So this is where a young person who finds himself in need of finds himself homeless can be taken in by a family home where there's potentially a spare room. So this family and the young person are then vetted and supported by a support organisation. That could be FEMI. There's a number of other different organisations across Wales that do it. And then it's an environment which is particularly supporting and nurturing for that young person, and they're then supported to go on into employment, work or training, and also learn independent living skills rather than going on to maybe be placed in no age specific provision. Thank you for that plug, Kelsey.
Yeah, it's perhaps not quite as immediate. Getting the conversation typed in. Does anybody want to be brought up onto stage to chat?
Sophie, if you want to come on and talk about team around the tenancy, you'd be welcome to. Oh, yeah. How do we do this now then? Add, is it?
I think so.
Yeah, perfect.
I can't believe I've actually come on this. So hi, thanks, Bill. So yeah, team around the tenancy, funded by the Innovation Fund, the same as the Housing First projects that Bill was mentioning. I'm Sophie Morris. I manage the service. Initially, we were working with just young people who had left care, who were presenting as homeless or at risk of, in Conway and Wrexham County up in North Wales. But now we've extended that to all 16 to 25-year-olds across North Wales. And we use a tool from Canada called the Youth Assessment and Prioritisation Tool. We're the first organisation outside of Canada to be using it. And it's a strengths-based and holistic tool that's been created by and for youth from beginning to end. And it was actually created by a Housing First specialist over in Canada. Because again, assessments for adults didn't work for young people over in Canada, and that's what they found. So they created the app. Wally Chuck created it. So since we've been using the app, and it's coming up to our 1-year anniversary, and I'm touching wood saying it, but since we've been using it, which we started last November, we haven't actually had a young person come back into our service. We have been successful in, we don't want repeat customers, and by using the app, what we've seen so far is that they're not coming back. So that's really exciting for us. We also provide training to other organisations as well. It can be used as a systems tool or as an individual project. At the moment, we're just using it within our individual project. But the dream would be that local authorities would take this on. It is something that takes longer to do, but again, it's showing the strength by actually taking that time early on. We're actually addressing the core issue rather than kind of putting a sticky plaster on whatever the presenting issue is at the time. And our practitioners only have a caseload of between 6 and 10 young people at a time. So again, it's giving that chance to build relationships like youth workers do. You're the pros in that area, but it allows us the opportunity to build up that relationship with young people and really find out what makes them tick. I'm still surprised with some of the things that the practitioners and the team come back with. We've got one young person who is obsessed with plants. She's got different types of plants in her home. I think last count was about 40 odd different plants in her home, and she knows how to care for each one because they've all got different care. I've got no idea about plants, but she knows everything. And as a result, the practitioners learned as well. So it's just relationship building. And I just think that's the strength of that tool is it covers every aspect of a young person's life, and it probably catches, and this was a question I was going to type, Bill, so probably putting you on the spot, but for me, upstream's great for those that are in school, but we're missing those ones that aren't in school, so I was wondering how they were picked up via upstream. The YAP tool can be used from 11 to 25. And I know in Canada, what they have been doing is using the upstream tool. And then for the ones that needed some, that were identified as needing extra support, they're then putting the YAP like that. I do that a lot when I'm talking, but it kind of meshes together. So they're using it as a follow-on. I've said my piece now. Thank you, everybody. And thanks, Bill, for inviting me on. I am not comfortable doing stuff like this at all.
So I don't think we are either, Sophie. So thank you very much. I mean, that was some fascinating stuff.
Yeah, I'll put my contact details in the thing anyway. So if anyone wants to contact me, more than welcome to.
Thank you very much.
Brilliant. Thank you,
Sophie. Thank you.
There's a question there from Dale about, as a digital officer, would be really keen how we could break the stigma of someone who's homeless through social media and digital content. Does anyone in the chat at all, or in the room, have any ideas on that particular one?
I had one while people may be typing away, hopefully. It's not so much related to the social media digital content, it's more relation just to a broader stigma. Hopefully within time, the Youth Housing Association Taifres will have that provision and have a big enough provision of housing for young people that you would eventually end up with that kind of mixed approach as social housing was originally intended to be. So you wouldn't have specific homeless accommodation beyond maybe short-term temporary accommodation, and then moving into a Taifres property would be an option for all, not necessarily just those who've gone there through the homeless system. You could have people applying for, like you do, applying for any housing association property. So then you've got that blended approach, and then hopefully you remove the stigma because people have ended up there through different routes of life. And then I'm sure as that develops, there'll be ways to look at exploring that from a social media and digital content. So apologies, that doesn't really answer your question, Dale, but in terms of a broader stigma around homelessness, I think there is definitely potential there. And Sophie, sorry for not answering your question. I think as Upstream continues to develop, obviously it's only in its pilot stage at the moment, and they've taken what they've learned from Australia and put a Welsh lens on it. There's been a couple of questions back to me when I've spoken about it before, about how it can pick up X group that it's not picking up at the moment. So obviously those who aren't in school, with it being a school-based scheme, are going to be probably one of the harder groups to reach. So it's going to be hard to work out how the scheme could develop to catch them. But there's maybe hope in the fact that because it comes in at such an early age and potentially at ages before where interventions currently are taking place, they might prevent those young people from leaving school in the first place. Sorry, just reading another question that's come in now. Yeah, Nick, completely agree. I don't know, sorry, it's quite to keep your trail of thought when you're answering and reading other questions coming in.
Oh, excellent. I think Team Around the Tenancy sounds like a project I think a lot of us will be wanting to visit, Sophie. I'll certainly talk to you about.
Yeah, and just to give Sophie a bit of a plug as well, we're currently working on a best practice briefing at EYHC with Team Around the Tenancy. So hopefully that will be published before long, and then that'll provide a bit more information around the scheme Sophie's talking about today, and also provide contact details and everything.
Yeah, I think what's very exciting about that is what you said about none of the young people coming back, because one of the things I think that we certainly find in Pembrokeshire is it's a question of there's less thought as to how appropriate the accommodation or the offer is. It's just a roof, and you have to, something's better than nothing. And I think the approach that you've got there really guards against that risk, because we have tenancies here that fail with young people within a month or 2 months, and some of the furniture that we have in our Moving Forward project comes from failed tenancies, and some of that comes from leaving care grants, which are then potentially ended up in the furniture's potentially ended up in landfill within a couple of months. So yeah, not setting young people up to fail is crucial, I think, Sophie, and it's really, really interesting hearing what you've had to say about that, because a workshop like this has to be about everyone talking, not just the presenters. So thanks very much. I'm conscious of the time. We're going to be repeating this one in about 5 minutes. I think that's correct, isn't it, Bill? 2:40, the next one.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, I'm not going to keep an eye on the time at all.
I'm quite happy to keep the conversation open until then. But I'm also conscious that some people may have other things that they want to see at 2:40. So is there any other interesting pieces of work perhaps going on in Wales that you would like us to know about, or any further questions about anything that you've heard so far? I share your pain, Sophie. In fact, I'm actually a little bit relieved that it's not just us in terms of the suitability. But yeah, it's not so much about suitability of a young person, it's about suitability of the service that you provide for their presenting needs and risks. And I find very often that that's a conversation with referrers that is very circular. You're going round and round in circles, because all they want is to close the young person, I think, and move on to the next one, because all services are really under pressure. But in terms of a youth work approach, that's not a rights-based approach, and we don't have that sort of relationship with young people. We have the luxury, I think, of being able to work with young people, from their 11 to their 25, if necessary. So yeah, whilst I'm not pleased to hear that, I am kind of relieved, if that makes sense, that it's not just our experience. Okay, I think it's drying up here, perhaps. Oh, there we are. Yeah, I think.
Well, yeah, certainly welcome back, Nick. That's ideally what we're trying to achieve through the roadmap, and it's just allowing people from different parts of society to see where they can fit into it and where they can then map their strengths and weaknesses as a local authority or as an organisation, and then they can come and have a read, hopefully, of our full report when it's finished, when it's published, it is finished, when it's published, and work out different schemes or projects, or even just approaches, little tinkers they can make within their service, which can make it a more inclusive or welcoming or better service for the young people which interact with it. So, if people want to start using a roadmap key titles, that's something which would be more than welcomed by UIHC. That's the idea of a roadmap for people to go away and use it however they best see fit, I suppose.
Yeah, I think the point worth making is that certain interventions do fit under different parts of the roadmap. I mean, we had a discussion even about upstream, about whether it is targeted or whether it's universal, and Sophie has pointed out that it doesn't maybe work quite so well for those that are not in the universal school provision, for example. So but I think framing common language leads to common understandings, I think. So I think that is a useful suggestion from Nick. And full disclosure, I do work with Nick day to day, and he keeps me on my toes. And we had a conversation yesterday, about where our work actually fits under certain parts of the roadmap, and it was an interesting discussion.
Yeah, and just to reiterate, Sophie, that's a really good piece of work to highlight there, the crisis piece around framing, really important. I'm sure if you just Google crisis, framing, homelessness, those three words will bring it up. It was from 2 or 3 years ago, I think, so not particularly long ago, and it's still very relevant today. And maybe you feed in to an extent to the question that Dale had about language and framing and stigma.